Hello, everyone. I'm the Scarred Storyteller, and I'm here to help you unwind today. If you're using this video to fall asleep, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel before you drift off. By the way, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? Now get cozy, relax, and let's begin.
Story 2. The storm broke over Ravenwood Manor like a feral beast, its claws of lightning raking across the midnight sky. Standing at the gates, Evelyn Mason clutched her coat tightly around her as the wind whipped her hair into a frenzy. The decrepit mansion loomed before her, its towering silhouette casting an ominous shadow over the rain-soaked gravel. She hadn't set foot here in 17 years, not since the night her family disappeared without a trace. And yet here she was, compelled by a letter that bore her mother's handwriting, though she had been declared dead decades ago. The creak of the iron gate set her nerves on edge as it groaned under her push. Every step toward the front door felt heavier, the air thick with something unspoken, unseen. The key Evelyn found in the envelope slid into the lock with an unsettling ease, and as the door creaked open, the scent of damp wood and mildew hit her like a wave. Her flashlight trembled in her hand as she stepped inside, the beams of light revealing walls lined with faded portraits. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her, their expressions ebbing between pity and malice. A shuffling noise. Evelyn froze. The sound echoed from the floor above, slow, deliberate steps that didn't belong to her. Her breath came short and shallow as she strained to listen. "Hello?" she called, but her voice came out cracked, consumed by the oppressive silence that followed. Against her better judgment, she climbed the grand staircase, her flashlight flickering as if sharing her dread. The second-floor corridor stretched endlessly, doors on either side looming like sentinels. She reached the one at the end, drawn by an eerie humming, a childlike lullaby. Swallowing her fear, Evelyn turned the knob. The room beyond was a nursery, untouched by time yet inexplicably pristine, its rocking horse swaying gently though no one was near. Her chest tightened as her eyes fell upon a single object in the crib, her childhood teddy bear, its button eyes stitched shut. But when she picked it up, she felt the weight of something inside. A chill ran down her spine as she ripped it open, and a folded piece of parchment fell into her trembling hands. Her mother's handwriting sprawled across it once again. "They're still here," it read. "And so are you." The door slammed behind her, and the hum grew louder, now accompanied by faint whispers. Evelyn spun, but her flashlight flicked off entirely, plunging her into utter darkness. And that's when she heard it, a voice, close and raspy, breathing against her ear. "We've been waiting, Evelyn." Story 2. The rain drizzled steadily as Evelyn approached the gates of Blackthorn Manor, its iron bars twisted and tarnished with age. The mansion loomed in the distance, a shadowy silhouette against the pale, stormy sky. Stories of the cursed house had spread far and wide, whispers of strange noises, flickering lights, and apparitions that seemed to watch from cracked windows. Yet, Evelyn felt compelled to uncover the truth. After all, it wasn't just curiosity that brought her here, it was the letter. The single piece of parchment had arrived at her doorstep in an unmarked envelope just days ago. Written in spidery handwriting, it read, "What you seek is buried in Blackthorn Manor. Come alone." No name, no signature, just those cryptic words. Evelyn's heart pounded as she pushed the gate open, the creak echoing through the chilly air. Her flashlight flickered as she navigated the overgrown path toward the front door, now barely visible in the thickening mist. Stepping inside, the air shifted, heavy with the scent of mildew and something coppery, faint but unmistakable. Broken furniture and shattered glass littered the floor, but it was the silence that unnerved her, a suffocating, unnatural absence of sound. Evelyn's breath caught as she noticed a trail of damp footprints leading deeper into the gloom. But they weren't hers. She debated calling out, but the oppressive darkness seemed to swallow her voice before she could speak. Instead, she followed the trail, her pulse quickening with every step. The footprints led her to a grand staircase, its banister caked with dust and cobwebs. Evelyn hesitated, the back of her neck prickling with an unshakable sensation of being watched. Then, a faint sound reached her ears, a soft, guttural whisper from upstairs. Determined, Evelyn ascended the stairs, each creak beneath her feet reverberating like a thunderclap. At the top, she paused, straining to peer down a long corridor lined with doors, every one of them slightly ajar. Suddenly, the whisper grew louder, shifting into a raspy voice that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed. Story 3. The rain hammered against the windshield as Claire's car crawled up the winding road, the old mansion looming like a shadow against the stormy skyline. She clutched the letter in her hand, a crumpled piece of parchment with jagged writing, summoning her to the forgotten estate of her late grandfather. It spoke of an inheritance, a once thriving fortune buried in the family manor. Yet the words carried a warning, almost a plea, to heed caution should she decide to accept the invitation. The gates creaked open as if of their own volition, a gust of wind howling past her like a mournful wail. Stepping out of the car, Claire's boots sank into the mud, her flashlight cutting weak beams through the sheets of rain. The mansion's towering spires pierced the black sky, windows like empty eyes staring down at her. She hesitated but steeled herself as she approached, her breath catching when the door groaned open before she could knock. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating, carrying the stench of mildew and something else. Metallic. The dim foyer was illuminated only by the storm's occasional lightning streaks, revealing a grand staircase wrapped in a tattered red carpet and walls lined with damp, fading wallpaper. But what caught her attention was the faint melody of a music box, echoing from somewhere deep within the mansion, a tune she recognized from childhood lullabies. Yet, she had never been here before, had she? Each step forward brought the realization that she wasn't alone in this house. Furniture bore claw-like gouges, shadows danced in ways the light couldn't explain, and whispers slithered through the halls as though crawling on the walls. The letter had promised truths, but with every room she entered, Claire found only more questions, a family portrait with faces burned away, mirrors that reflected her movements a second too late, and symbols etched into the wood that seemed to hum faintly when her fingers grazed over them. Finally, the music grew louder, leading her to a locked door beneath the staircase. The lock was rusted, the key nowhere to be seen. But her curiosity, or was it compulsion, drove her to pry it open with a broken piece of iron she found nearby. Behind it was a narrow staircase spiraling into the ground. The air shifted, colder, heavier, as though the house was exhaling a terrible breath, inviting her to descend. With every step into the crypt-like basement, the walls seemed to close in. The melody became distorted, dissonant, and Claire's pulse thrummed in her ears. At the base of the stairs was a single object resting on a stone altar, a dusty, ornate mirror. Its glass was in perfect condition, teasing her reflection. A whisper erupted, louder now, surrounding her in a cacophony of hissing voices. "Turn around," they said, over and over. Claire froze as the hair on the back of her neck bristled. She didn't need a mirror to tell her she was no longer alone. Something moved in the shadows behind her, and as she turned to see, the lights went out, plunging her into a darkness filled with the sound of breathing that wasn't her own. Story 4. The rain battered against the cracked windows of the ancient mansion, each drop dapping like a whispered warning. Ivy clawed at the sagging stone walls, swallowing the once proud structure in a suffocating grip. Marcus stood on the creaking porch, hesitating as the wind howled around him, carrying with it an unsettling chill. The letter in his coat pocket felt damp despite the fabric. "Come alone. The answers you seek lie within." The scrawled handwriting was barely legible, but it was unmistakably his sister's, except she had been missing for over a year. Pushing the heavy door open, Marcus stepped into the dim interior, the stale air wrapping around him like an unwelcome embrace. The mansion groaned, its wooden bones shifting as if to protest his intrusion. His flashlight wavered slightly in his grip, the cone of light revealing faded wallpaper peeling back to expose walls riddled with deep, jagged scratches. He told himself it was just age, just the decay of a forgotten place, but the marks looked deliberate, as if something inside had been desperate to get out. Further down the corridor, a faint sound rose, faint at first, like a shuffling noise. Marcus froze. It came again. Closer this time. Hesitant, he called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" His voice echoed through the empty halls, and silence followed, more unnerving than any reply would have been. Then, he saw it, at the edge of his vision, a fleeting shadow moving impossibly fast. His pulse quickened as he followed the shadow, descending deeper into the house. Every step seemed heavier than the last, the air thickening as if the mansion was alive, pulling him into its suffocating depths. At the bottom of a winding staircase, he found himself before a locked door. A rusty key dangled from a thread of cobwebs above it, swinging slightly without reason, as if beckoning him forward. Hesitating, he took the key and inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in an unnatural red glow. Inside, the walls were covered in photographs, of him, of his sister, and of people he didn't recognize, all smiling against a backdrop that looked eerily like the mansion itself. But the faces in the photos seemed wrong, too wide, too hollow, their eyes black pits that seemed to watch him. And then he saw it, standing still in the center of the room, draped in shadows, a figure humanoid in shape, but contorted and wrong, its head tilting unnaturally. The figure stepped forward, and the air seemed to vibrate with a low, guttural sound that Marcus felt in his bones. He backed away, panic rising like a tide, but the door slammed shut behind him. It whispered his name, a command as smooth as silk and as cold as death. Story 5. The storm raged violently outside, lightning slicing through the midnight sky as the lone figure approached the decrepit mansion. Julia hesitated at the rusted iron gate, its hinges screeching eerily in the wind, but there was no turning back now. The letter in her trembling hands insisted she come here, the place she had sworn never to set foot in again. A single sentence on the aged parchment had brought her back to this forsaken place. The truth awaits where the shadows linger. With each step up the weed-choked path, the air grew colder, heavy with an unnatural stillness that seemed to muffle even the thunder. The mansion loomed ahead, its jagged silhouette illuminated briefly by a flash of lightning. Broken windows stared like hollow eyes, and the front door hung ajar, swaying slightly as if beckoning her inside. Memories clawed at Julia's mind, her childhood here, the whispers in the dark, and the night her parents vanished without a trace. She pushed the door open, its groaning echo reverberating through the cavernous entry hall. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs dangled like tattered curtains. A faint, sickly sweet smell hung in the air, curdling her stomach. The once grand chandelier above her creaked ominously as though it might plummet at any moment. Julia's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, catching snatches of forgotten portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow her every move. A noise. Faint, but distinct, a soft shuffle coming from upstairs. Her pulse quickened as she turned toward the grand staircase, its banister warped and splintering with age. She wanted to run, but that same unseen force that had drawn her here now propelled her forward. Each step groaned beneath her weight, and as she reached the landing, the sound came again, a scraping, dragging noise that sent ice through her veins. It was coming from behind the closed door at the end of the hallway. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the tarnished brass knob, her mind racing. Was it an animal? A squatter? Or was it something else, something that defied logic and reason? The door creaked open to reveal a room cloaked in shadows. The air here was frigid, and her flashlight flickered as though rebelling against the darkness. And then she saw it, a figure huddled in the far corner, its back to her. It moved jerkily, as if pulled by unseen strings, and emanated an inhuman, guttural growl. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice trembling as she stepped closer, against every screaming instinct. The figure stilled, its bony shoulders rising and falling with labored breaths. Slowly, too slowly, it began to turn. Julia's flashlight faltered, the beam warping and dimming as something ancient and malevolent stared back from soulless eyes. What happened next, Julia couldn't quite piece together in the chaos. A rush of movement, a deafening roar, and the crash of her flashlight hitting the floor. When her vision sharpened again, she was no longer in the mansion's hallway but trapped in an impossibly vast, labyrinthine room with walls that seemed alive, pulsating as though breathing. Whispers filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "The shadows have always been watching, Julia. And they are waiting." The game had only just begun.